Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, November 8th, 2022 meeting of the Long Meadow School Committee. School committees and other public bodies may continue to hold remote meetings through March 31st, 2023 under new legislation enacted in July of 2022. The statute, Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, extends quorum reductions for remote meetings. All votes while there is remote participation must be made by roll call vote. The meeting is being recorded and aired live on LCTV. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will begin tonight with correspondence. Kevin?
A memo from Mr. Donald Jarvis, Director of CTEC, dated October 27th, 2022, regarding the Walter E. Quigley Jr. Student of the Month Awards for October. The Longmeadow student honored was Emily Aiken for Graphic and Visual Design 2.
Thank you very much. Moving on to approval of minutes. There's a recommended motion.
Move that the school committee approve the minutes to the October 24th, 2022 school committee meeting as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We'll do roll call vote. Anybody online? No. All right. Zach?
Yes.
Jana?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And yes for me. All right. There is a remaining motion.
I move that the school committee approve the minutes to the November 2nd, 2022 school committee meeting as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right. We'll move to a vote. Zach?
Yes.
Jana?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. Wonderful. All right, moving on to our next portion of the meeting. We will be looking to our Student Advisory Council to the school committee. We'll turn it over to Ms. Drowick and Mr. Connolly.
Thank you, Ms.
Take it
Drowick.
away.
So, sadly, two of my members of my committee could not be here tonight. One of them is competing in the field hockey finals tonight, and Abby has also had another conflict. She can't be here, but I'm here. So I'm here to report to you. So, to start off, awesome for our classes. The senior class, doing a lot. More power to those officers. They're planning our Powder Puff game, which will be taking place the day before Thanksgiving break. I am one of the Powder Puff captains, as I'm a football captain. If for our people at home who do not know what the Powder Puff game is, girls from the senior class get entered into a draft. Our captains and our coaches pick our teams, and then they have a nice little flag football game just to build class morale and class spirit. They're in the planning stages of the class play, coming soon. I've been talking to the play committee. Big stuff's coming out soon. They're working on some dine-out nights as well as a dues drive. The junior class are working on their They are going to have their homecoming dance this Thursday on the 10th. The juniors have sponsored the dances not just for their own class, but for the entire school. So kudos to them for opening up to the whole school to build more school spirit. The sophomores had huge success for their lock-in. That is when all the sophomores for the evening until the wee hours of the morning stayed in the school. I came in from the football game from Westfield, and there was a bounce house in the back gym. There was a dodgeball tournament going on in the gym, and I believe some movies in the BTC, which is great to see, and great to see all the class participation. And the freshmen are planning a car wash. It is November. If you can please go support them, because they might be freezing, but hopefully they can get something good out of it. For student activities, we are currently in an all-school spirit week, which I can say is going awesome. There are plenty of student participation. Yesterday was Jersey Day. Today was ties, obviously, versus tie-dye. Tomorrow is 90s Day, and Ms. Drowick has already said that she has her butterfly clips ready to go. All our staff are ready with their 90s clothes, and all the students are ready as well. And then tomorrow will be Lancer Colors. Thursday is Lancer Colors, which is black and white, and then we will have our dance, which is going to be really, really awesome. Can't wait to see how the rest of the week goes. Anyway, students attended a MASC conference, which is the Massachusetts Association of Student Councils. Okay, I said that right. A lot of ideas were picked up about school spirit, which is where the spirit week came from. Instead of just classes having a spirit day, it became a whole school spirit week. So the school really came together as a whole, and the students that went to that conference took a lot back to Longmeadow and are ready to apply it for the coming year. We also had our National Honor Society induction, which was very awesome. I have it on good authority from their officers that it was a great success. Plenty of new inductees are well qualified for the National Honor Society. It was a great event. The Key Club Spectacular, I heard went really, really well. If there are any kiddos that went to that and got some candy and had a blast in the high school, that was really awesome. And then the fall concert, which is November 22nd. Please try to attend. A lot of our musical ensembles will be performing, some of them for the first time. A lot of our freshmen are in that concert. So that's going to be a big thing for them. And then the Stroll for Strength is also taking place the day before Thanksgiving break. If you could come support the school as well as the families that are involved with the Stroll for Strength, that'd be really awesome. And then finally, ending with athletics. Good luck to our teams tonight. Boys soccer and girls field hockey are both in the state championships. Is this finals? I can't remember.
No.
This is 16. This is 16. So, fingers are crossed. They can go for it, as well as girls soccer will be later this week. And that is all I have to report at this time.
All right, wonderful, thank you. Any questions, comments, or feedback from the committee? Jenna?
I'll just say it again, Dagan. Your energy, I just appreciate you.
Thank you very much, John.
Any others? All right, wonderful. Moving forward, we will open to visitor comments. If there are any visitors either at home or in the room who would like to speak, you'll have 3 minutes of time. You can come on up to the microphone, say your name and where you live. Yes.
In-person visitor?
No more pressure. Lauren Arbor, 78 Wimbledon Drive. I hate to come off so heavy after that, but I'm just here kind of to reiterate and simplify the need for some school safety improvements. A little over 60 other parents and myself have come together, the number's growing, and we agree that we should first focus on elementary schools just because of their age, they're more vulnerable. There's a long list that we'd like to see for improvements, but we feel we should start with the entryways because they're single point entries, which is great, but we can fortify these to make them a little more secure. We feel that we should upgrade to a ballistic material for the doors. It would make the whole building more secure. That's why they're on government buildings and high traffic public buildings. I can't speak for other schools, but I know Wolf Swamp, they really need the entry reconfigured. Right now, anyone who goes in can just bypass the office and have full reign of the school. What I'm picturing is a second set of entry doors that would kind of enclose with access to the office with a pass-through. So if someone comes and they just say they need to drop off, homework or lunch, it can just be passed through to the office without having to gain access to the whole school. If someone does need access, they would sign in at that pass-through point and then be buzzed in to gain access to the rest of the school. In theory, if someone gained access through the first doors, they could be sort of locked in the vestibule if they are a suspicious person until authorities could come and, assess the situation. It's just another level of safety. I've received some tentative designs, and they look great. You would never know. I mean, they're not hostile looking or intimidating. It just looks like regular doors, but they are much safer. I've gotten a few tentative quotes. People are nervous to give numbers right now just because of the industry and shipping costs, and it's changing day to day, so no one wants to commit to anything. And I'm still talking to others because I figure the more information, the better. And I know usually these things come down to money. So if the school board or the capital planning committee are dismissive because of the expense, maybe they can calculate what they think the children's safety is worth, and give a number to the parents, and then the parents can kind of come up with a way to raise the funds to supplement what we feel our children's safety is worth. And we can move on from there, but something needs to be done, and I don't want this just to be a concern when headlines are, all over with tragedy. I think it's something we need to be working on now, and we shouldn't wait. And thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for coming by. And I know capital planning is on our agenda for later, so thank you for taking the time to come in.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you, Lauren.
comments from home? All right, wonderful. We will move on to school committee announcements and recognitions. Anybody like to kick us off? Go ahead.
I'm always-
I know, I love it.
Ready, love it. So I don't know, it was maybe Tuesday, last week at some point, I got to be at the high school. So for National Honor Society, which Dagan already mentioned, it's just a beautiful celebration of like the students and then the families that were able to be there, and just kind of a nice, positive, like, these kids just want to do something kind and help the community, help the school, help each other. So that was lovely. Then I went home, and then I got to go back, and I got to visit the Longmeadow Robotics Lab, which is always a kick, because I'm like, wait, what are they doing with those tools? So super exciting, and there's so much going on in there. And, if anybody's interested, go look at the Longmeadow Robotics.org. It might just be longmetal.org. There's some great pictures on there. There's some great videos, and it's an awesome thing. And, they're gearing up you'll hear more from me. They're gearing up for the, to start building soon, but just great experience. And then I got to go over to the volleyball game. And I've been an athlete my whole life until, the last 10 years, but I'd never been to a volleyball game. And if you've never been to a volleyball game, you have to go to one, or you have to watch one on TV. Like, I don't care where, I could not, I was coming out of, like I am now, I just couldn't believe what I was watching in this high school, and like they're throwing themselves purposefully on the floor to catch a ball or hit a ball, and Longmeadow won that game, but it was just like the talent and the skill and the coordination and the teamwork and the communication. You talk about vision of the graduate, they were all there, superintendent, right out there on the floor. So it was just fantastic, and I just wanted to make mention, because I've never seen a volleyball game, and you just never knew what was going to happen. Like in soccer or lacrosse, you can kind of figure out if they're running down the field with the ball, they're going to do something. But like, this was just no clue. So that was my day in Longmeadow Public Schools, and it was awesome.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing. Any others? Mary?
A shout out to the cross-country teams. The girls and boys participated in the PVAC races last weekend. The girls came in third in Western Mass, and the boys won. And Evan Lyons actually won the race. He's a senior, and it was awesome. So just really excited for them. They compete in the sectionals this weekend. You might have mentioned this, Dagan.
I'm not, but
Yeah,
I'm sure.
it was
I'm
pretty
glad you
great.
did.
Yeah. So great race, beautiful day.
Wonderful. Any others? All right, we will move on. Business with guests, there is none, so administrative reports. Superintendent, we'll turn it to you.
Few reports that are in your packet that aren't really part of the agenda, but are worth your attention. One was the completed educational profile for the MSBA. This is a preliminary review of our programming at the middle school level, and some preliminary projections on what programming could look like, what offerings could look like in a combined setting. So that was another significant report that we sent to the MSBA as part of our eligibility period. So thanks to the administrators that were involved in pulling this together. I think it offers again, an initial snapshot of what we think the benefits might be as we move forward with that building project. We will likely pull together a meeting of the building committee at some point in the future, just to get oriented and set up for success. There's another report in your packet. This one actually comes courtesy of Sue, but I included an agenda for you from the MTSS SEL team that has been assembled to take a look at the strengths and gaps that we have with regard to SEL-related MTSS supports for kids. So I thought that might be of interest to you. Another report that we anticipate having for you at your next meeting is the report from the New England School Development Council. This is a report that was done as part of the program of studies review at the high school. So we may want to pull together a curriculum sub just to have an initial review of that report, and then we can bring it to we can have it for the school committee at your next meeting. Lots of things going on. Dagan mentioned the athletics. It's a busy time. We've moved now to these sort of state-level tournaments. So here in Western Mass, we still have Western Mass championships, and then our athletes move on to state-level tournaments. Boys and girls soccer in the round of 16. Field hockey, I think, is in the round of 32. And as Mary said, cross-country this Saturday. So lots happening, and it's exciting to see these state tournaments play out, but oftentimes our athletes have to travel great distances. I think our boys team is in Masconomet, and
Yeah.
girls are going to Danvers, and at least cross-country is nearby at Stanley Park on Saturday. So, but the other volleyball had a great run. They had a great season, and we're looking forward to some success with field hockey as well. So that's it. Tabletop exercises that we talked about at your last meeting are underway. Mr. Mazza had an opportunity to attend one at Williams, I think it was, on Monday. These are the safety drills that we're doing in partnership with LPD and LFD, so excited to get those going. And Sue and I had an opportunity to witness some reports from some of our student interns at a recent reflection event that they had, and it was really cool to hear their stories, their successes, their struggles, how the internships have shaped their career goals. Really powerful stuff, including one intern who is working at the Longmeadow Fire Department and has just embraced the opportunity and run with it in ways that we're so proud of. So all good stuff.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Questions, comments? Jen?
Just a quick question, Superintendent.
Yeah.
Can those kids come to the school committee soon?
We thought that we're trying to arrange the student presentations, so we thought that the interns, that might be a good opportunity for the high school to do its presentation to the school committee at some point. Yeah, so first semester interns are underway, and then there's another batch that will start in the second semester as well. Probably about close to 50 kids over the course of the year.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Mary?
As you're planning for those presentations, I would love to bring some of our LPVEC students. I know we had mentioned that in a meeting
Yeah.
last year, but that might
Yeah.
be a great way to
Yeah.
hear about what's happening.
Yeah, the kids who are in the technical education program at CTEC. Yeah, love it. Yeah,
That'd be excellent.
yeah, for sure.
Other questions for Dr. Fitz? All right, moving on. Assistant Superintendent reports. None? I think we're hearing from both of you
All right.
later on.
Yeah.
Oh, later on? No.
Or no?
The
Up to you.
MCAT, the data report is down below. It's agenda 11.
Yes.
It's under new business. Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
You can take it, I mean, it's up to you if you want to.
Fine either way. All right, we'll hang tight then and leave it as it is
Yeah.
on the
Marty,
calendar.
you are muted, and we have a visitor now.
Oh,
I'm not showing that it's muted.
Owl is not working.
oh,
It's red. Oh, it's red.
Okay. Interesting. Let me see.
we have some small technical difficulties for folks at home.
My
We'll
apologies.
get back to you in a moment.
You good now?
It may be good now.
The red did go
It should
away,
be.
so fingers
All
crossed.
right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank
Can you
you.
hear us already at home? Thumbs up, hopefully.
All right.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. think
All
we're
right.
good, yeah.
Yes, we're good?
Yes,
good.
we have a
Yeah, there we
thumbs
go.
up.
Okay,
Thank you.
perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane.
All right, wonderful. School committee chair report. I wanted to kick off with a big thank you to Leaf for the Roaring Twenties Gala that they held over the weekend. Very sorry I missed it, but I know we had great committee representation with some fantastic costumes as well, as I saw. And thank you for all the work that they put in for that gala and fundraiser. And also a big thank you to Leaf for representatives taking the time this week to visit all 6 of our schools and talk with educators about the upcoming grant cycle and process. We appreciate all the support that Leaf offers to Long Meadow Public Schools. I was also going to shout out the class of 2025 for the sophomore lock-in. Big success. Lots of fun. It was the last one that my husband and I chaperoned, so all of our children are now
Wow.
through the 10th grade, so that was fun. And thank you to all of the students and parents and staff members who were there and awake until 2 in the morning making the magic happen. So great night for everyone. We did not stay quite that late, but thank you to everyone who did. Also, congratulations to all of our fall athletes as they move forward into playoffs, and also to all of our high school arts department folks for upcoming play. I know we have a play coming up in early December, and concerts on their way starting in the next week or 2. So thank you for those. And then finally, I wanted to offer a note of thanks to the Mass Association of School Committees and Mass Association of School Superintendents for their annual joint conference last week. The theme of the conference was promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion, and I was privileged to attend as the representative of Long Meadow and Long Meadow Public Schools. I was able to meet with a lot of other school administrators and school committee members from across the state and had wonderful conversations about building leadership and fostering collaboration and concrete strategies to continue moving forward equity work across our districts. So it was a very invigorating and energizing and engaging conference, and thank you for making that possible. And I look forward to sharing what I took away from that with all of you in the coming weeks and months. So happy to add in any more details if anyone wants to look at the many pages of notes that I took while I was there. So, and that's all I have. So we will move forward to our student rep report. We're back to you.
I have nothing to report.
Good. Okay, you did all the reports. Other reports, LPVC, Mary.
Next meeting is November 16th.
Thank you. All right, wonderful. Energy and sustainability.
Yeah, we're continuing to work hard on the home energy audits, as I've reported before. And we also had a discussion about the long-range planning, which I know we are discussing. So, yes, familiar topics.
There we go. Great. Seal, Jana.
I'm learning technology. I'm going to use my technology. So Special Education Alliance of Long Meadow, SEAL, so it's sealma.org if you want information from the website. But the next meeting is tomorrow night, November 9th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And again, if you go to the website, sealma.org, you can get more information about that meeting. This says, and it's an excellent opportunity to meet our assistant principals / special education supervisors from preschool, Blueberry Center and Wolf Swap Elementary Schools. There will be an overview about the special education programs offered at each of our schools and an opportunity for you to ask questions and learn more. And then again, it goes on to say that the link is available. Again, you don't have to have a child with special abilities to want to engage and participate in these events. They're very informative and engaging, and special thanks again to Jean Fontaine and Megan and Diane who keep the ball rolling. So thank you.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Moving on to subcommittee reports. Finance Subcommittee. Tom, I'm pretty sure that's you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. In your packet tonight are a couple of fiscal year 23 budget reports. They are primarily informational, as it's early in the fiscal year to try to take a guess as to where things will end up as of June 30th. So there is a year-to-date budget report and also a revolving account report that I would say are kind of tracking where we would expect at this time of the year. We also are monitoring staffing positions that are vacant and how that will impact the budget in terms of funds that might not get expended if we are unable to fill those positions. No action needed on either of those, but I'm happy to answer any questions now or in the future if school committee members have them. Please feel free to reach out to me. There is also a budget revision that is reflective of the grants that the school committee accepted at their last meeting. They are changing the amount and in most cases the distribution of where those funds are appropriated within the budget. IDEA, I'll quickly go through the change in the amount for each of the grants. So the IDEA grant is increasing by $13,989. The early childhood grant is seeing an increase of $1,008. Title IIA grant is seeing an increase of $1,889. The Title IV grant is decreasing by $510. Title I is seeing a reduction of $19,745, and the Medco grant is an increase of $10,615. So the net change to the FY23 budget would be $7,246. When we create our budgets, we usually carry over the appropriated amount we have in the current fiscal year. So what you're seeing in the original budgeted amount was what we anticipated the budget to be. It's what our 22 amount was, and now we're revising it based on the actual amount that was awarded. It normally happens about this time every year that we revise the budget based on the award amount and how we anticipate we're going to spend it. So Finance Sub reviewed it, recommended school committee approve it. So school committee would then, assuming you accept or the revisions, we would then revise the budget accordingly.
All right, wonderful. Questions related to budget revision or year-to-date budget reports? We do have a recommended motion.
I move on the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee that the school committee approve the budget revision as outlined in the document titled FY23 Grants and Special Revenues, revision number 1, dated November 3rd, 2022.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Thank you. Any further discussion?
It's just a typo, Nicole. I don't even
Yeah.
know. Do we say it or?
Go for it.
I think it's supposed to be outlined, right?
That's what I said.
You did say
Yeah.
outlined. Good point.
Okay.
I read the word as outlined, even though it says outlined.
I know. That's why I'm saying
Okay.
it's written
Then I'm
wrong.
guessing, Diane, you caught it as outlined.
Yeah, it's correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
That worked out
Yeah,
then.
I never know if it's supposed to be a typo or not. But
Nice catch. All right, any further discussion? We will move to a roll call vote. Zach? Gianna?
yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right.
The next item for consideration are submission of the FY24 capital project list. So in your packet is the capital project request list that Finance Sub reviewed. There are currently 11 projects that are put forward for consideration for approval by the school committee to submit to the town for funding in FY24's capital project process. The remaining projects that are on the list are items that have been put forward but not moved forward for prioritization or funding request in FY24, but may be elevated in subsequent years depending upon the needs and other projects that are being considered. Finance Sub requested that for this year's submission that the projects be broken down into 2 categories. So you can see on top of page 1, there are currently 4 projects that are being requested under safety related. The first is the replacement of the hardware for interior and exterior doors at Williams Middle School. Currently, there are multiple keys that are needed to access the building depending upon what area of the building you're in. The goal would be to switch out the hardware so there is a consistency with ease of one master key that administration, custodial, public safety would have to gain access into any area of the building. That request is for $20,000. The second project is for construction of a vestibule at Wolf Swamp School. This would allow for an area where the public would be able to enter the building but not have access into the interior of the building, creating kind of a area where, as the visitor commented earlier, either drop stuff off or pick up items without having to gain access into the building. There is a room right on the right when you enter Wolf Swamp. The expectation would be that would be on the other side of this vestibule area that would have locked doors. The request for that is $125,000. And again, I think getting prices for all of these projects is difficult. The projects at the earliest would begin on July 1. So to get a vendor to give you something that might not happen for 8 or 9 months is challenging. The third project under the safety category is for additional purchase of cameras throughout the district. The committee has been supportive of adding cameras, especially at the middle and elementary schools. They would like to see some additional coverage in areas that currently don't have cameras, both some interior and some exterior. So the request is for $50,000 for additional cameras to be placed. The fourth safety item request is for some enhancements and upgrades to the public address system at Williams Middle School. There are some areas that currently don't have speakers, both interior and exterior, and concerns about if there were ever any kind of announcements that needed to get to all staff. It might not be heard depending upon where they are located, either in the building or outside. So that request is for $20,500 for changes and upgrades to the Williams Middle School public address system. I'm happy to go on to the facilities ones if you would like, and then maybe answer questions, or do you want to stop and see if there's questions related to the safety-related requests?
Why don't we pause? We'll do questions related to safety related, and then we'll have time to keep moving forward. Any questions related to the safety-related requests for the capital planning?
I'm just wondering about double doors for the other schools. We have them at Williams. We have them. Where do we have them and where don't we have them?
I would say that Center has an access that requires you to go into the office before you can access the school. Williams has double sets of doors, but it doesn't lead you right into the office. The office is in and on the right.
Yep.
At Glenbrook, I think I don't know that I can conceptually think of a way to create a vestibule that doesn't unfortunately provide access to a room, because it is, as soon as you walk in on the right, there is access to a classroom there. I don't know that there's any way to construct that to bring you into the main office area without accessing parts of the building that would lead to classroom access. And Blueberry has 2 sets of doors, but the office is right there before you would possibly get on to accessing any classroom spaces. But not, that forces you right into the main office like it does at Center. So I don't know that creating then that all of the other schools would be possible like you have the opportunity at Wolf Swamp. I don't know that we can force it as much as we can at those other sites, unfortunately.
Okay. And is that why that school is prioritized? Because it's possible?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
because it affords us the opportunity to create that second layer of access and preventing them from getting further into the building. and especially with the way Wolf Swamp is laid out, not only is it that they have access to that room, the entrance to the office is down and around the corner, where at least at Blueberry, the entrance to the office is right there. Staff can see where people are going and have immediate ability to intercede if necessary. Wolf Swamp, it's much more difficult and farther away to get to the hallway.
Look out, we see Blueberry Hill, watch people walking in.
From their desks.
From their
the-
desks,
from
they can
desks.
see
Yeah.
a clear shot of people coming
The
in.
parking lot and
Yeah.
the front door,
Yeah.
along with the monitors.
For Center and Blueberry, which I think is the two that I'm correct, have, you come in through the first set of doors, and then you have immediate access to the office that then leads to the rest of the building, or a second set of doors, where you have to kind of be diverted through the office. Has there been any consideration of adding a door to the office that also requires a buzz-in? As sort of a quasi-second set of doors that blocks off the office space as well? So it's not,
Yeah, I think Center is the only one that might have that currently. I don't know that the others currently have that capability.
Blueberry, oh, they do have that already at Center.
They have that second set of doors that are locked and controlled,
Yeah.
yes. I don't
Okay.
think the others have that
Oh, okay.
ability in terms of the second set of doors being locked.
Okay, I was picturing Blueberry Hill having a similar setup where you. go
Doesn't
through the
force
office.
you into the office.
Oh, okay.
Once you get through those second set of doors, the office is on the left, but you still can access the building.
Okay.
The second set of doors are before the main office.
Other questions, feedback? Kevin?
Yeah, I just want to say, from the Finance Committee, you know, the discussions that we had about this were similar to what our visitor was mentioning. And so, I mean, I appreciate her bringing the concerns that she and the others have. And I want folks to know, like, these are things that we've been talking about. This is why the safety things are so high priority. And it was really nice to hear that one of their priorities is a thing that we spent a long time talking about, is that vestibule at Wolf Swamp. So thanks to the folks out in the community who are thinking about this. And I hope that you hear us when we say, like, we're thinking about it too, and we're having those discussions.
Other thoughts? Just to piggyback on what Kevin's saying and keep bringing those forward. And continue attending and talking to us about what's going on. Gianna, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, I don't really know if it's so Tom, for the purchase and installation of cameras, that just means more cameras, right? So because what I'm wondering is did that come with discussion around does anybody monitor the camera? You know, we just have cameras and then they help the school, but even at the school level, are they monitoring?
Yeah, I mean, I think the front door office, the monitors or they're monitored by the staff in the office. I don't know that there's anybody currently monitoring all of the 150 or so cameras we have throughout the district. Believe that LPD can access them if there were a situation and needed to see what's going on, to see what live footage. But it also is recording and retaining that footage for any necessary investigation after the fact. But to say someone's sitting in front of a monitor watching all of the even exterior door cameras, I don't think that's currently happening.
Okay, but all the cameras that exist and that are being put in, did you say they record? So
They
it's
do.
possible to go
Correct.
back?
It is,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or feedback on the safety-related requests? Julie?
I would just say, to piggyback on what Kevin said, there are a lot of things on this list that feel like things that should be done over time, and these felt like the highest priority items. I think as we think about additional safety requirements for the schools or upgrades, it is really helpful to hear from people in the town, because there are different feelings about what is the right level of safety and security measures to take. But So I'm excited to see as we move forward, including with talking about the middle school upgrades, how we'll get some of these other items taken care of. And I also think it was very helpful to have people from other departments in town come in and be very thoughtful about where we're spending the school's money on things versus where we can get grants to cover. So it was a good conversation.
Good. Thank you very much. Last thoughts? All right, we'll move on. Thank you. Facility-related
So for the
requests.
facility-related request, the Director of DPW and Facilities Director participated in the finance sub for the conversation related to our requests and needs, things that were high on their list, potential grant opportunities to look at possible funding instead of town resources for some of the requests. So happy to go through the 7 that are on the list for consideration. The first item is related to the playground structures at the 3 elementary schools. There is a request to replace and add synthetic material under the playscapes at the 3 elementary schools. The request is for $900,000. Again, I think there was some additional work being done on the cost, but they wanted to provide a placeholder. They also had or were submitting a request to the Community Preservation Group Committee for funding for this, and that was due on December 1st. So they said they were pursuing that as a possible either portion of the funding in collaboration with Capital. So it would also include for fencing along the Knowledge Road at Wolf Swamp, where the playscapes are kind of along the road, the side street, so that it would create that barrier between the school property and the road and sidewalk from a safety perspective. The second item would be upgrades to the HVAC system at Blueberry and Wolf Swamp. These systems were renovated when those building projects were done approximately 20 years ago. Both of the systems, the chillers, use R22 in terms of the chilling aspect of the system. There is a leak at Wolf Swamp, so they had to constantly recharge the system. Not only the financial cost, but also the impact in terms of the environment. The systems need to be addressed. So they are working on a price related to that request, but it was something that was high on their list of needing to get addressed. The third request is related to projection systems throughout the schools. This would be, I think, phase 1 of probably a 4-year process of replacement of our projection systems at elementary and middle schools at elementary and high school, with the hopes of, if the middle school project is successful, that would address the needs of the middle schools and hopefully Band-Aid the 2 middle schools to get us to that point. The $100,000 request would be for the systems that are in the most critical need of replacement now, with a phase-in over the next 3 years of replacement of all of the systems. There is definitely a spike in one of the years when the high schools' current projection systems need to be replaced. There are a significant number here at the high school compared to the other buildings. So the projection systems, depending upon whether you go interactive or not, are anywhere from, I'd say, $1,500 to $3,000, depending upon the type of device that is used. So this would be phase 1 of switching out the projection systems throughout the district. The fourth request is for removal and replacement of the glass doors on the display cases. This has been an ongoing project. There is currently some funds available. I believe $75,000 was approved a few years ago through Capital. I think the town is going back looking at what are other options to address this issue from a safety perspective. but we didn't want it to get lost in the conversations with all the various competing needs. So that request is for $200,000. Item number 5 is for, again, phase 1 of multiple phases. I don't even know how many it would actually end up being. It says 1 of 3, but it could be many more. But it's to begin painting throughout the district, classrooms, hallways, common spaces. There's just a need for ongoing upkeep in painting. Coat of paint can go a long way. It's been asked, it's been part of our capital project list for at least 5 years, probably even longer than that. We've had robust conversations with capital planning on it, and DPW is very supportive in looking for funding to get this going. Project number 6 is to address some of the needs related to the grandstand and press box here at the high school on the stadium field. There are definitely some concerns related to access and the stairways leading up to the press box, so there is a request for $40,000 for improvements there. And then the last request is for the high school to look at some changes to the exit of the horseshoe onto Grassy Gutter to improve flow and safety related to cars exiting the high school, especially at dismissal time. There have been a number of accidents related to traffic on Grassy Gutter from vehicles leaving the high school premises, and the high school principal has advocated, and I believe it's also been on our list for a couple of years now, in terms of looking at that and possibly changing the flow related to the exit. So those are the 7 projects that are facility related in the priority order that Finance Sub recommended. And just a quick note on what happens next. Once school committee approves the list, they will be submitted to the town manager, who will receive requests from all of the departments and put together a list of recommended projects for the capital planning committee, which will review them, talk to departments, get input in regards to the request, and make a recommendation back to the select board for inclusion on the annual town meeting warrant article. There is approximately $2 million budgeted annually for capital project requests, not including community preservation, but strictly capital. So you can see our request alone probably exceed that amount. We have historically received funding for a few projects. It varies every year, but we most certainly will be advocating with community preservation and capital for whatever project school committee authorizes for submission tonight.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments on the facility-related requests? Jen?
I mean, I have a couple questions, but I can start off, Thompson, and thank you for all this time. I'm having trouble visualizing, like, the island at the high school, like where, because we already are forced to go, like everywhere you turn, you're forced to go left or right. I can't picture.
This would be at the end of the horseshoe before you exit onto Grassy Gutter. One of the ideas is possibly forcing cars to go left or right instead of directly across. There's a side street that kind of lines up directly with the exit of the horseshoe. And a few accidents have been when cars have been trying to go across the 2 lanes on Grassy Gutter, and there have been accidents. Another idea is...
So an island would go, because there's literally arrows that say left or right.
There are
like-
arrows, but nothing that forces you. You can proceed across. So the island might force and prevent cars from having the access to get to the side street.
Got it.
That's one of the ideas. Another idea might be to force traffic out just taking a right onto Grassy Gutter. So I think there's a good amount of vetting that would need to take place related to this, but I think the principal felt that there was enough data to support looking at it related to the number of accidents over the course of the last 10 years, and it was important to him and the high school, so.
Yeah. Do you remember, it was maybe like, I think it was just got out in 2019. Remember the students did like a whole, do we
There-
have access to that? Does that have any relevance with this?
Yeah, their proposal was creating more of a circle where the bus lane kind of is, around and back out,
Okay.
and then having certain traffic, so it would eliminate the one-way flow of the horseshoe and maybe bringing traffic in from Grassy Gutter that are going into the parking lot, what would currently be the exit way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then drop-off would just kind of be a horseshoe. Again, I think drop-off at the high school, if all of you have participated in it or are sitting on one of the side streets or main roads at 7:45, 7:35, you know it can back up. And so I think any change would really need to have some engineering study done, some traffic studies done, because you might fix one problem and have unintended consequences by creating others.
Mhm.
So I don't know that there's a perfect answer. I think drop-off has been looked at from many different perspectives. But I think it was important that we brought forward the concerns of the high school administration.
Yeah, so should this be like one of those situations where we really should be asking for money to conduct a survey and all that stuff, like you just said? Because it's,
I think the first step would probably be there's a traffic committee, I believe.
Commission, yeah.
That kind of reviews changes, stop signs, and like, I don't know that if they've received information on this or if they would have an opinion on it. There might be, if funding is approved, that might be step one of looking at what are the current challenges, what are the impacts of potential solutions before any work is done.
I guess that's why I'm like right now, I wouldn't be ready to say, yeah, keep number 7 in, because like there's so many, like, there's a lot. I mean, maybe if it said do a study on number 7, but I don't know I don't know if I'm supposed to say that out loud, but like.
I think the reason that there's no cost associated with it, because I don't know what solution we would end up with and what potential infrastructure would be impacted, meaning sewage and drainage,
Yeah.
storm drainage and curbs and sidewalks.
You're gonna have to
and all
widen
that.
the
So,
street, like-
Yeah, so I don't know, there's not enough information for me to even get a dollar amount associated to this potential request. But
Yeah.
it is here. It was something that's been on our list for the last couple years, at least.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Zach?
Yeah, I would just like to support the recommendation that facilities-related request number 1, the playground replacement and/or enhancements, is at the top of the list. I know a little bit about some of the background with some of our playgrounds. For those folks that may not be familiar with some of the challenges that we have, they are not particularly accessible and inclusive for all of our learners that might have different needs and abilities to access those playgrounds. And while it may be true that there are some potentially smaller ticket budgetary approaches that we could take to make them a little bit more inclusive and accessible, the other reality is that our current playground structures have served past their recommended manufactured service dates. So they're already sort of past due to be in service, and something we might want to consider. So a smaller, shorter-term sort of fix or solution doesn't necessarily make sense, because the playground structures have already served their useful lifespan. So I do support this at the top of the list for facilities recommendations for all of our elementary schools.
Great. Yes,
I had a question that goes along with that. So, and thank you for that, Zach. So my question was, didn't we just do like an ADA compliance of the wasn't there like an audit of like the playgrounds and?
I think we've been trying to, I think there's a general consensus that what Zach described is true, that these playgrounds are in need of a replacement, and that if we're truly committed to inclusivity, then this would be a worthy project. As a bridge solution, we put down some rubber matting to allow for greater mobility. so that at least students who are in wheelchairs could access the equipment. But even that, we know that that's a limited bridge solution, and it really doesn't get us to where we want to be with these elementary playgrounds. So I'm appreciative that the town manager's office and the new DPW director, working with Tom and I, have really kind of got behind this. I'm hoping that that the Community Preservation Committee is able to determine that it's eligible, and that we're able to move forward with this.
Yeah, but that's why I was thinking, like, Tom, wouldn't there be, like, unless I'm misremembering or misunderstanding, but, like, I feel like somebody went around and did a report on accessibility for people with disabilities or maybe it was the public playscapes?
I think the town is just embarking on a review of active recreational spaces, including the school
Yeah.
playgrounds.
Yeah.
But it's not, it just, I think, is getting off the ground is what the town manager indicated to us. So,
Okay. 'Cause I was-
it most certainly could help in terms of this discussion. I don't know the timeline
Yeah.
as to when that will be completed, but they are looking at not only the schools, but all of the play areas throughout town.
Okay, because I was thinking, because then would, maybe an ADA grant come in, to be in compliance with, so, I was just trying to, I get that it's
I do
number
believe
one.
a
I just
grant
was trying
was
to-
submitted for one of the elementary schools on behalf of Wolf Swamp, but I think it's too early in the process to know whether or not we'll be successful in receiving funds from that.
Okay, thank you.
Tom, I'm wondering if you can clarify, just to double check, the synthetic material that would be placed around and under the playscape is fully accessible?
Yes, it would
Yes.
provide access to
The entire
the
playground
entire
surface?
area if we...
For all students?
Yes.
Okay. Whatever mobility issues. I'll echo Zach. I'm thrilled to see that this is in first place at the top of this list here. It is definitely a point of concern, and I know it's hopefully something that we can find some connection with the town, with community preservation or ADA grants, but happy to see it continue to be at the front of our thoughts. I'm wondering if you can add on to if there's been any talk of adding any additional bridge measures between now and when this might kick off for next year. Any additional mats, or I know we talked before about painting surfaces. Is there any update on any of those fronts?
Yeah, I think we are looking at possibly expanding some matting that was added. I think some of it will depend on how successful is this request in securing funds for potential replacement of these playscapes. And we are still working with the high school art department and potentially doing some enhancement to the blacktop areas for some interactive play activities for all students. That would be accessible for all students. So something we're still working on, really trying to, if we're successful, making it kind of a community
Love that.
project with support from some of the student groups, maybe in the spring.
I love that. I love bringing everybody on board for that. That's a great idea. Further thoughts, comments, or questions about any of the other items on facility-related requests?
I didn't have,
Yeah.
if nobody else.
Anybody else? Nope, go ahead, John.
Tom, number 4, the glass doors and the display cases. This has been since 2019, at least, or because when I came on, this was, and I remember, this still is mind-boggling to me that, didn't they hang the door, the people hung the doors wrong? Or there was something, I don't understand why insurance doesn't pay for this. This to me is insanity.
The weight.
Yeah, I don't know that I can speak to where the deficit falls or where there might be some, where the things went awry. I don't have the answer to that, Gianna. I know that there was a situation more than 3 years ago that kind of led to this discussion about looking at and removing
Yeah.
these doors. I think at the time when we looked at it and had an initial quote, we thought we were requesting funding that would have been sufficient to remove and replace. And then, I don't know if it's just the timing, but by the time we went to hire a company, it had gone up by 3 or 4 times the amount of funding that was approved. So I think we're still exploring options that, one, will make them safe and secure, but maybe not cost as much as what the current projection is.
And remind me, because I know I asked this question, does there have to be glass on those doors? I mean, does there have to be
I think there needs to be
doors?
some protective barrier between the items that are being displayed in those cases and the shelving in particular. If somebody were to fall into it with no protection between what's in there and those glass shelves, I think we're just creating a different set of liability
Yeah.
by having them open and not protected. So
Yeah.
the question is, are there other things besides glass that would be work and allow for both the items to be safe and protect individuals from any type of injury?
Yeah.
So
Mary?
Just a quick question, which is the center school list. There's some red notations that money has been set aside. Is that just waiting
which item,
until
Mary,
we?
are you on the?
Oh, I'm sorry, the ongoing
Yeah,
projects.
those are just notes as to updates. The red is the update.
Okay,
Might be a little old in terms of when I noted them. I think it might have been from when I sent this out to admin requesting their input.
okay.
I don't know if you're speaking to the boiler.
No, I was more looking at the window replacement.
window,
I feel like
yes,
we
that-
talk about those windows
That
a
is
lot.
still, the windows is still an ongoing
Oh, there's more.
conversation.
Yeah.
There was some funds approved at
Yes, yes.
annual town meeting last year. Again, is not enough to address the entire building, so there is definitely still conversations occurring with, I think, the permanent building committee and DPW.
And do we just hold those funds because it was approved
They
until
are still
we get
available,
enough? Okay.
and designated for window replacement.
Great, thank you. And then I just have a question about if we have a motion to approve these. For number 7, because it's TBD, is that just, we have, what would a motion entail? Like, just we approve potentially that you can investigate further and we would prioritize these, or yeah, go for it, however much it costs. You know what I'm saying? Unlimited.
Yeah. I would say what you're approving is submission of the projects in the priority that they're listed.
Okay, thank you.
If by chance there is interest in getting to either one of the ones that don't have a dollar amount associated with them, I think then we would
Oh, yeah.
investigate more, what are the actual amounts. I do believe work is being done on number 2, which is the HVAC system for the elementaries. But even on number 7, it might be, as Gianna has indicated, it might be a first step in exploring what are the options, getting an engineering report back, which will then help inform possible additional funding requests. So
Okay, thank you.
I also don't know if we'll be successful in getting 11 projects funded through both capital or CPA, but.
So ultimately, this is a submission to the town manager, who in turn develops a town-wide capital planning recommendation.
From all departments, yes.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
And just last point of clarity, the way these are divided now for safety-related requests, facilities-related requests, the priority numbers pick up again, 1, 2, 3, 4, et cetera.
They do.
How does that work? Are we,
think
depending
we-
on the project?
I think we really wanted to ensure that both the town and the community understood that we feel there are certain things related to the safety of our buildings, separate from the operation, the physical operation of the buildings, and that they both kind of have priority in separate categories. They may ask us to come back and combine them and prioritize them. I don't know. I think we would advocate strongly for both project lists, and understanding that one on the top of each of those is our top list, our top concern.
All right, wonderful, thank you. Seeing no further discussion at the moment, we do have a recommended motion on the table.
I move on the recommendation of the Finance Subcommittee that the school committee approve the prioritized FY24 capital projects list as presented and dated November 8th, 2022.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on this topic? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And yes, for me as well. All right, next up.
The last item
Going.
on the agenda from Finance Subcommittee is, again, brought forward some information related to the special education audit district schools. So each year through a state agency called the Operational Services Division, they review and authorize a increase for the tuitions related to these schools, the programs they offer students that we have enrolled in these private audit district schools. What is being considered for FY24 is a 14% increase for the rates, the tuition rates that we pay. And why it was brought to Finance Sub for their attention is because currently our tuitions in FY23, based on the students we currently have in private audit district special ed schools and the programs they're in, is approximately $2.8 million, not including collaboratives. So if you add 14% without adding any new students or changing their programs, it's going to increase our cost by about $380,000 for FY24. So it's a significant increase if it gets approved. In the document that's in your packet, the FAQ, I think it has kind of a historical list of the inflationary increases that they've approved, and I think the highest was 2.72%. So the fact that this is going to be 6 times higher than that is significant for all districts. It's I know my colleagues, the superintendent's colleagues across the district are all concerned about this, and so we wanted to bring it forward for the full committee to be aware of it, and that if this does get approved, how that will be incorporated and impact the development of the FY24 budget. So I know there are some efforts being done by districts to lobby legislatures to look at this and think about the impact that it could have on local communities in their budget for next year. So happy to try to provide any information. I think what we're asking for is support from school committee to reach out to our local legislatures through a letter asking them to look at this and possibly consider the ramifications of such a significant increase for next year.
Questions on that and/or, yes, Julie?
Tom, I know we went over this the other day, but when we talk about lobbying or pushing for a different result here, are the options both that the 14% increase would not be accepted, or just that we would get, that the state would provide funding to cover?
I think whether it's a phased-in understanding that costs related to these schools have gone up and retaining staff is essential, and the service they provide to districts is most certainly needed. But such a significant increase in 1 year, I just think would be difficult for us to absorb unless they're going to provide corresponding relief and additional revenues. The challenge with that, though, is sometimes those revenues are a lagging or the year behind. So you have that gap year where you have this impact of increased costs but no catch-up of the increased revenue. So whatever relief, whether it be increase from state resources or limiting the increase, that can be implemented in 1 year and phase it in over multiple years so that it can be planned for and absorbed with hopefully offsetting resources from the state.
Other questions or feedback? So, we have a possible motion?
I move that the school committee authorize the chair to develop and send letters to Mass legislators regarding the financial impact of OSD's decision to set a 14% inflation factor for approved private special education tuition.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Before we move on to further discussion, I'll just say that I would be happy to work with Dr. Shea here to develop a letter, and also think that this might be a good opportunity for us to reach out to surrounding districts and collaborate with those school committee chairs as well, and possibly have a letter that goes out from multiple committees signing on. Might have a little bit more impact. So that's something that I can investigate and work towards with other districts in the area. Any other discussion? Yes, Kevin?
Just, Tom, am I remembering correctly when we were talking about this in finance sub, you said something about if this goes through, then the total amount that we have budgeted for these programs would be like 1% of our overall budget. Like there was some number that you said, and it was like, wow, that really drives home like how big an impact this is.
Yeah, I think what I was referencing, that $380,000 increase that we would see equates to 1% of our general fund budget and just under 1% of our total budget, which is including the grant. So if there isn't additional resources to support that increase, I mean, that's a big increase. 1% of our budget is already going to be taken off of that amount we receive from the town every year, which is about $900,000 to $1 million. So more than a third of that will already be designated or committed to the increased costs related to these tuitions. So it's a significant amount of the overall budget, for sure.
Thank you.
I'll just add on to that related to what Julie was asking about before, that I think it's important that when we're talking about this letter, that we do maybe look at both things. These are very important schools. These are our students. They are valuable to all of us, I know, and we want to make sure that they're able to access the best education for them. But we also need funding. So finding ways to either have this roll out in phases to make it more accessible for communities, or more importantly, to find state funding would be a helpful approach. So I think we'll definitely talk about multiple things, and I'd be happy to talk with you about it too.
Sounds great.
There's lots of great background on this. So, all right, any other additional commentary? All right, we'll move forward with a roll call vote. Zach?
Yes.
Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And yes for me as well. All right, I think that wraps up Finance Sub.
It does,
Yes,
yes, thank
all
you.
right. Thank you for all of this, Tom. That was a lot tonight. Appreciate all that work, and thank you to our Finance Sub for all the time and energy that they put into this as well. We are moving on to Policy Sub. I know you all had a meeting prior to this meeting. Any report to share?
Superintendent, you want to?
Sure. Policy Sub met just prior to this meeting and had an opportunity to get reoriented to the general approach that Policy Sub was hoping to take last year, which was really to look at how policies align or fail to align with school and district goals and school committee goals. And then more specifically, the Policy Sub looked at a policy that would bring our local policy relating to the acceptance of gifts and donations more in line with state law and aligned with a new recommended policy that has come to us from the Mass Association of School Committees. And then additionally, there was a discussion around meal charging policy, which I would want to defer to Mr. Mazza. He thought he was off the hook for the night, but if you can fill us in on that.
Yeah, the state adopted some new legislation back in, I believe, October of '21, outlining some changes to meal charging policies at the district level. And so the subcommittee reviewed our current language, and there are some recommended changes, deleting some of the current language, and I would say consequences related to students that have a negative meal balance. So we will bring forward, and some other small edits, but we'll bring forward those changes to the next school committee meeting.
All right, wonderful. Good. Curriculum sub, I think we're.
No report?
No report, and hopefully meeting soon, yes?
Yep. Well, Diane, if I could ask you to flag that a meeting of curriculum sub prior to the next school committee meeting?
Thank you. And then evaluation sub, any report?
No
Not yet.
report.
All right. Ongoing business, long-range plan steering committee. So I was able to meet with the assistant town manager to discuss a little bit more about what the work of that committee will entail. You will find in your packet a graph that looks kind of like this that shows some of the things that are included in this grant funding. So this is related to an action grant that is going to be funding numerous projects across the town. The middle section of the grant is the one that will apply to the long-range plan steering committee. The committee is not an advisory to the select board. It was established by the planning board, but it's not expected to be an advisory board for them either. It's rather a board on its own with its own distinct autonomous charge that it will operate within. The question of whether or not it will be a voting board or a recommendation board is as yet to be determined. There are a number of things that are as yet to be determined, in large part because the group has not had the opportunity to meet yet. So the plan is that at that first meeting, that would be some of the things that would be discussed, if it would be advisory or a voting board. The town is in the process of reviewing proposals from a planning consultant firm, and is working to complete that process within the next week. Once that process is complete, the consulting firm may also have a recommendation about how to organize that committee. The timeline is that the first meeting would be held within the next couple of weeks, either before or shortly after Thanksgiving, as an opportunity first to review the old long-range plan, and also to have an introduction to the planning consultancy firm. We talked a little bit about this municipal vulnerability preparedness grant that is from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. That is who is funding the work. It funds a lot of different programs that are community-based and student-based throughout the town, but the housing and traffic and education and cultural and natural resources that you see sort of in the middle of the yellow circle there are the ones that are particularly pertaining to this. As far as timing, again, this is tentative until the planning consultancy firm is able to meet with members and make some decisions about exactly how they'd like to move forward. But currently, the expectation is that there would be a few meetings with the committee as a whole, every other month, 90-minute meetings, 10 total in all over the period of time. And the idea would be that outside of those meetings, members will organize into subcommittees based on their own personal expertise or interest. Those committees would maybe meet more often, monthly or even twice monthly, but in phases. So the larger committee will work through at those 10 meetings each of these issues in turn. And when it is, say it was housing, when it is time to discuss housing, the subcommittee that's dealing with housing would meet perhaps multiple times in the lead up to the meeting that will address housing more, followed by a little bit more of a lull. So it would be busy in spurts along the way here. And I think that was everything. Oh, there also subcommittee members would need time to do some homework for reading, reviewing, and vetting materials that the consultant firm will assemble in preparation of those meetings and the subcommittee meetings. So that is currently the plan for that. Questions from that first? I realize it's still a little bit of a pin. I know that they are hoping to have more information by next week, once they know which consultancy firm, and then they'll be able to set a date, but it would be helpful for us to know before. Yes, Mary? you had a-
How long is, you said 10 90-minute meetings over the duration?
Every other month.
For
Yeah.
how long? For how long?
So each one, you've got roughly 5
Per year?
Per year.
Oh, okay,
Ish.
sorry, it's a
Yeah.
2-year, that's what I meant, how the total is about 2 years.
There's
Okay.
a little bit less, yep.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, is there anyone? Sorry, is that?
10, okay, I get it. I'm sorry, I don't know why that took me a while
No,
to
it's okay.
process.
It's-
I get it.
Yes.
Every other for 10, I get it, that's 20 months.
There we go,
Okay,
exactly.
Thank you.
No problem. Other questions, comments, and/or any folks who would love to jump in? Speak now. All right, I am happy to, I don't remember if we need, we don't need a vote on this. No, that was not. Okay. I am happy to take this on if there isn't anybody else who would like to do that and represent us. That is, if there is no one else who would like to step forward. I don't want to step on toes, but in case, okay. No?
Because you're interested, Nicole, like.
Yeah,
you-
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it sounds fun. I enjoyed talking with Corinne. We had a nice conversation. She laid out a lot of what that planning process might look like and some of the hopes and ideas that she has for it, and I'm looking forward to getting on board with that. Yeah, it sounds interesting. Yeah, a lot of diverse topics, so.
Well, thank you for doing it, because
Yeah, absolutely.
it is, I love the concept and the, like you're saying, all the, but
Yeah.
yeah, so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm interested to see particularly how all of these things intersect together. I think will be something I'm looking forward to finding out more about how all these different departments can kind of come together to create this. So,
And you probably said it, Nicole, but there'll be opportunities if like any one of us
absolutely.
was like, hey, can
Yeah,
you-"
and I'm confident that however the subcommittees work out, I'm confident I will be coming back with both updates and/or requests for information, opinions, thoughts, advice, et cetera, as we move forward.
Perfect, thank you.
Definitely. Yep. All right, we will continue moving forward. We have new business. It's your turn. You're up. All right, Student Achievement and Growth Report. We'll turn it over to Ms. Bertrand to take us through that.
I think Marty's gonna pop it on this.
Perfect. We had a paper copy.
Nicole, could I just really quickly, while we're waiting for the screens to title up, I had a kiddo with a basketball clinic last night that got rescheduled for tonight because of a gym conflict. I've got to run and go grab him and take him home.
Yeah.
So I'll be rejoining
Step
via
up.
Zoom
No problem.
shortly. It's just going to be
Yep.
double duty.
Yes.
I'll see you.
Nicole, I actually have the same
Online
plan to.
shortly.
Okay, go for it.
On Zoom.
We'll
Okay.
continue.
We're doing the same thing.
Actually, are we good to continue on? Is that too?
We're good to continue, I just need, yeah.
We just want no votes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
perfect.
I heard that you'll be zooming in.
Yeah, and I can do it right
Yeah.
now from my
Yeah.
phone, so I'll just
Okay.
when I get outside, I'll.
Yep, perfect. All right, great. Yes, thank you.
Town meetings, how long have they got? They started this month. I couldn't get that right. Sorry, so embarrassing.
Oh, because Julie's going to.
Julie's going to do this off, yeah.
Yeah.
Gives me a minute to find my full packet. There we go. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
All right, we're still good on Zoom?
Yep.
Ben? Yes.
Yep, almost there.
Perfect.
Sorry about this. All right.
Success.
So if I go full screen, I lose the little zoom window, so I'm just gonna, I will, let's see, I'll enlarge this as best I can.
Are you screen sharing, just so folks at home?
He is.
I
he
am
is-
screen sharing,
Oh, okay.
yes, so.
That's why you lose being able to see the people.
Gotcha. There we go, perfect. It's the next best thing.
Okay. I can,
And play with it a little bit while I
yeah, go for it.
have some conversation.
I think, well, hopefully this is, you have a copy in your packet, and I think folks at home should be able to
Yeah.
follow along.
So, hi, everybody. I just wanted to set up just a typical update. We've been talking about bringing data and sharing with school committees, just a little bit about data from a really big picture. And so that's what we'll do. And this is slide 2. I just want to point out my artwork, my non-fungible. So
Oops.
if you look closely at that with a magnifying glass, you can see about all of those are data points that we have access to or that we have collected or gathered. So there are hundreds of data points that we have access to and that we look at. We use data points all the time to make decisions, academically, social and emotional learning, educator decisions. So there is lots and lots of data out there for us to look at, and we look at it often and use it, to drive our outcomes. Not only data, but we do use it a lot. So there's data on finance and staffing and graduation and post-graduation. We know a lot about what happens to our graduates after they leave here and if they get through college in 4 years or 5 years or 6 years. And so it's really interesting data too. You can actually kind of get caught in this data rabbit hole searching around. So lots out there. I thought we'd start with my favorite MCAS. Been a really challenging few years in MCAS, so we have to be careful when we're comparing. In 18 and 19, there were full tests, and then in 1920, there was no MCAS. Half tests in 2021, 22 full tests, but still, when you're comparing data, it's always best to compare it under the same conditions, and we just can't do that right now with anything over the last few years. So keeping that in mind, always. The state and Longmeadow kind of followed suit and took a plunge, as expected, and ELA especially, trending down and continues to trend down as of the last results, spring of '22, and right through all grades. And in mathematics, in '21, the trend was down, but in '22, for the most part, the trend was back up. And so 2 years is not a trend make, I guess, but we're hoping that, especially with our new math program at elementary, you'll see those math achievement scores continue to go up. Science didn't seem to take as difficult of a hit downward. You can see that we're up in grade 5 for science and tech over time, and so those trends look better. So science and math look better than ELA, unfortunately, but we are keeping an eye on that, and it's to be expected, sadly. So the big picture is that our MCAS results, for the most part, are following the trend of the state with a smaller gap, thank goodness, for learning loss. I'll skip through a couple of these. And just kind of a reminder that MCAS is really just one data point, one snapshot in time, one snapshot in some difficult times lately. So we rely more on a day-to-day basis for kind of placing students in reading groups and things like that, on ongoing assessments, and we use the benchmark assessment system for literacy at elementary so that we are putting students in the right groups. And we have an iReady screener that we do 3 times a year, K through middle school, and in math and ELA. So we have kind of ongoing assessments that we use in addition to, teacher assessments. So some of the academic strategies as a result of some of this data were that we're going to continue to investigate and adopt high-quality Tier 1 instruction We've done a lot of that lately. We appreciate your budget voting for that. So we've put new science in, which is showing, I think, on our scores, and we've put new math in, and some new text at the high school, and yeah, so. We're going to continue to support educators and their high-quality Tier 1 instruction as well, following the MTSS framework, so we have a lot of PD around that, or I suppose as much as we can possibly get in there, providing a lot of academic coaching for math, for the new math program. Our educators are getting half a day every 6 weeks to plan units with our coaches and really dive deeply into that. We're doing some coaching for universally designed lessons this year as well, and we also have our ELA coaches in place at elementary. We have a really solid district curriculum accommodation plan, which I'm happy to see that our educators are using to help students and give them the leg up they need in order to access their curriculum in a meaningful way. And we'll continue, to provide meaningful ongoing content and pedagogy professional development as we plan throughout the next few years. We had summer academic sessions for students. We have tutoring opportunities, and we still are offering some tutoring opportunities for students online, and we have a lot of digital tools that kids can use independently, including iReady, MyPath lessons. So that's been helpful. And then the kind of more fun data, I guess, is one way of looking at it, is the school climate data, and we have a lot of data relative to school climate. The first one is what we call vocal data. It's the Views of Climate and Learning Survey, and this happens along with MCAS. It happens towards the end of MCAS, so keep that in mind. Students have just been assessed a lot, and then they're asked to answer questions about how do you feel about assessment. So to keep that in mind, and again, definitely not a controlled space over the last 4 years, but it's students in 4, 5, 8, and 10 took it this past year, and it's scored on percentile 0 to 99. So schools that score, between 0 and 30 have at least a lower favorable climate, and 31 to 50 is somewhat favorable, and then the higher you go, the favorable and most favorable. So this climate measures engagement and safety and environment. Ask questions about diversity. How well do you feel diversity is embraced? Ask questions about safety, both emotional safety, social safety, and physical safety. Do you feel safe at school? Do you have an adult that you can go to? Those kinds of questions. Environment. It asks environmental questions and talks about. Ask students about discipline, for example. Do you feel like discipline is fair? Do you feel like all adults have a stake in discipline, or is it just the principal? Things like that. It's interesting. So we have some local trends, and not surprisingly, some of the students are reporting a little slippage in our school climate over COVID. So again, I think probably pretty typical and normal to have kids feeling that way. As long as we've been looking at vocal data, students in elementary schools feel more positive about their school climate than students in middle school and high school. So that's always been a trend. The 3 measures that they engage are pretty consistent too, so it's not like kids are feeling really unsafe and it's skewing the others. So it's, kids are pretty even across the board between safety and engagement, and so no concerns about any one area in school climate. And then we did a challenge success survey this year, which was a lot of fun. We did this in the spring as well. The challenge success survey takes a look at what does success look like for all students, and asks kind of climate questions, perspectives on a variety of areas, homework, sports, extracurricular, things like that. And so that went out to students in middle school, 7th and 8th, and all middle school and high school, and parents and staff. And we got our results back. Unfortunately, those are not public, and there's only one login for the whole district to look at those results. But we can get, if you want to see them, give me a call. We can look at, it's got a really cool dashboard, so you can play around with the data. But this Challenge Success Survey really helps to plan what success looks like for all students, and we're really kind of mired in that, right? Looking at universally designed lessons and equity, and so this survey was pretty successful. I think we were concerned about some things that didn't pop as a concern. One of them was, I think, homework. I think we were like, "Ooh, I don't know. I feel like maybe we're giving students too much homework," and maybe some students were feeling that, but they reported out.
Confirm or deny.
Okay. Did you take it? Okay. So it wasn't overwhelming, like, wow, you know, we're just really burdening students with homework, and that was great to get that result back. The staff at middle school and high school had the opportunity to take a look at data at the start of this school year, and had some time to think about and contemplate what areas they thought they might want to address in classrooms, and to address some of the themes that they felt rose to the top. And one of those is sleep, right? And so how are educators trying to help students to just to remind them that, you know, really turn your cell phone off, you know, maybe, you know, if you have a football game and you have, you know, violin and you have a full day of school, you know, maybe you talk to the teacher about it and decide where the homework is important and where it lies and things like that. So those kinds of things. So that was great. Some key findings: students in 7th grade and 8th grade have a good time in school. So they Challenge Success is they look at overall how many times a theme came up, and fun was the #1 theme that came up for middle school. So that was really fun. That was really fun to see that theme come up. The majority of students feel like they have an adult they can go to if they have a personal challenge, and then even more have a peer that they can go to at middle school, and that is one of the highest protective factors for students, as long as they feel that they have someone to go to, even although some staff felt like that wasn't a high enough % for all students, so they were working on ways to connect better with kids, right? And then there were some questions about engagement and how students kind of sometimes go through the motions and get their homework done and get all their schoolwork done and do well. And we call that just doing school, but not too engaged in the content and not really sure why it will be important later in life. So a large group of teachers were working on, like, how can we get these kids to understand why this is being taught now and how it will affect them in the future. So hope that's working.
It's good.
Again, sleep at the high school is another challenge. They report, and middle school, you know, they're all reporting about 7.5 hours of sleep. And at that age, depending on which research you look at, it's between 8 and 10 hours a night that those students should be getting. So, high school perceptions, they're most, the words that came up the most in their surveys were welcoming, caring and welcoming, and difficult and stressful. So I think that's probably pretty accurate, you know. So, yeah, you know, one doesn't negate the other, right? A large percentage of students have an adult they feel like they can go to when they need to. Not unusual. The common sources of stresses are grades, tests, finals, other assessments, right? Yep. One of the themes that came up was competition at the high school in all areas, across all areas, academics, sports, what college are you getting into, those kinds of things. And so teachers have been quietly kind of interjecting other ways to go about having conversations about what you're choosing and things like that. And is it really about the best, or is it about the best fit for you? So trying to work those things into your school day. High school students report about 2 hours of homework a night. So, and they, you know, feel like it's rigorous and maybe not overloaded as much as we thought they were going to think it was. And finally, I think I'll talk about the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and that's sponsored by the coalition, the CLOSE Coalition. That's the Coalition for Substance Abuse Education here in town. And Shelley Warren has been doing it, I think, even before we got that grant. Martin, yeah, we've been doing this survey for a long time. This year, it was administered to 7th graders for the first time, and 7 through 12. And they had a very high response rate, which was great, and similar questions to school climate and school issues, emotional issues, health factors, and then protective factors. So this survey really is trying to get behind what behavior students are demonstrating or thinking about and trying to shape that behavior into a more positive way. So. More students report feeling overwhelmed and feeling severely stressed. This was last year, so we haven't had any data for this year. I will say that there's an overall feeling of that things have calmed down a little bit and students are not as stressed out, and our administrators all of them have reported that things are better as far as stress is concerned, so let's hope that is accurate. There's a sad trend towards eating disorders in the high school. Those had kind of really gone away, and they are creeping back in, and for males and females. It used to be typically a female kind of thing, and now we're seeing it across the board. So that's a challenge that we're kind of trying to address in the high school. High school students have reported downward trends in substance use since 2013, which is great. It continues to trend downward here in town. Unfortunately, alcohol and binge drinking is something that does not trend downward in Longmeadow. In fact, I think we're one of the top towns in the state that where students report that they use alcohol and binge drinking. So the CLOSE community is always working on that perception. And remember, it's a perception survey, so it asks in the do you think do your friends, or are you experiencing this, or your friends are experiencing it? So it might be what somebody is perceiving. Is not necessarily fact all the time, depending on how the question is asked. So again, they asked the sleep question, and they found that students are not getting enough sleep. That's a procrastination. Again, a high connection to an adult, which is like the #1 protective factor. Students feel like they fit in. This is middle school. Our middle schools have done an incredible amount of work in advisories and with social and emotional learning and the CASEL frameworks about making sure that there's a place for everybody and that everybody fits in. So I think you're seeing the results of that. And there are, even at the 7th and 8th grade, a small number of students who are reporting binge drinking and using substances that they shouldn't be. So that is a concern, even though that's a very small number. So as a result of the data that we look at on a regular basis, we have all these outcomes, and you probably don't want me to read them to you verbatim, but it really helps us to strategize our teaching and looking at the VOG competencies. It guides us in our life skills program. It was a big factor in applying for the MTSS Academy. So the data really does drive us to make decisions or to seek out grants or to think about changes in curriculum, to how we address remediation of a kindergartner who's having a hard time with articulation. So I don't want to run through all these with you. You have them here. But we've done a lot with data, and it helps really for me to go through it and put it all down, because it validates that we're spending time and responding to it. And there is a ton of information that you can get your hands on if you'd like to. I probably should have put my email address in this last page too, but I'll send you a link by email with the data that you can get to. There are a couple of good places to go in the Department of Education, and you can spend literally days in there. So some of the data is really cool about what happens after high school. And our students have a really good track record of after high school. That was a lot.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That is.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, feedback?
Can I underscore a couple of things
Yes,
before?
go
So,
for it.
thank you, Sue, for doing this, and I honestly think that the last 3 slides there related to outcomes are really, that hopefully demonstrates sort of the link between the data that's available to us and the programmatic offerings that we're trying to put together. I think with MCAS, what we're seeing is that we need more time, and that the recovery seems to be happening in math. ELA, not so much, and we're seeing that here locally and across the state, across the nation. So, I always say the great thing is that we have many years to get students to where we need them to be by the time they get their diploma, and so I think that's a key consideration. I want to thank Sue for arranging opportunities for staff to dive into this data. Frankly, we always wish we had more time. As Sue mentioned, the staff dove into the challenge success data of middle school and high school at the beginning of the year, and that was really, I think it was informative and helpful and interesting. We need to think about how we can push some of this back out to parents. There's a lot of, interesting information. I was thinking about one of the things that jumped out at me on Challenge Success is the disconnect between what parents report they want for their own child and what they think everybody else wants. So they'll say, well, I want my child to attend a school where, a college or university where they're healthy, happy, and it's a great fit. But when they are asked, what does the rest of this community want? They'll say, well, the rest of the community wants the most selective college that their child can possibly get into. So there's some of those really interesting disconnects. And even when we ask students, what are your peers doing on the weekend? They think everybody is out, drinking and binging. But when we ask them about their behavior, it's very different. So sometimes there's these disconnects between perception and reality, which is really, really interesting. And so we'll continue to explore ways to push this information out. We'll share this slide deck and access to the MCAS data, and we need to engage parents with that challenge success data because there's some great stuff in there.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
And sorry, you mentioned
yeah.
the disconnects. Those are
Yeah.
a really good place to target and advertise. So especially when it relates to, what are your friends doing on the weekends? Because everyone's friend is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, right? According to your child, and that's not accurate information. So we call it social norming campaigns, and every year we take a look at the YRBS data and take a look at what kids think versus what kids report as reality, and target and kind of advertise. You've probably seen it in the school, the posters,
Oh, yeah.
their flash on the screen. So we are, that's a really good place to make a difference in kids' thought and adult thought processes, right? So.
Thank you.
Yep. I saw Janice hand earlier.
Oh, thanks, Nicole.
Yep.
Sue, thank you, and to your whole world, everybody that helped do this and looked into it. You mentioned under the key findings, the youth risk behavior survey, the LHS findings, and the mention, the high school students have reported an upward trend in anxiety, depression, and eating disorders, and you talked about that too, Sue, and so it's not really, I guess, really a question more so than I'm wondering, maybe it is a question, if there's been any talk about I'm not saying, I'm going to be very clear, I'm not saying that sports causes anxiety, depression, and eating disorders, but I know that there is a relationship between sports and, I have to look a certain way, I have to be a certain weight, if I can jump higher, if I can, run faster, if I can, sneak, I don't know all the sports that well enough, but I do know that there is a relationship in some cases, and I'm just wondering, like Superintendent's talking about, trying to engage parents and families more in these conversations. I think, do we have 80% of our LHS students play a sport? Is that?
That's a realistic figure.
Yep.
That's a targeted audience right there of hey, and you talk about disconnect. Some kids just don't even know that when you're starving your body, you're actually doing more damage. And I feel like there's topics that could be spoke about with the students on the sports teams, boys and girls.
That's a good one.
Because again, that's a target audience, and if that information then goes home,
Mhm.
you know, to the parents and the families or the guardians, I just really think that that's a, I think that would be
Good
huge.
audience to speak to. Yeah, thank you. I'll keep that in mind. We do
Mary?
we do bring speakers in based on kind of the survey results, so that would be a good.
But speakers
thing.
to the, like, I'm talking like if you know, like, you got 80% of the kids.
Your captive
how many
sports
teams,
audience.
You know, like,
Yep.
yeah, like,
Mhm.
you know.
Yep.
Mary?
So I noticed that the science and math scores seem a little bit more solid than ELA, and also science and math, if I'm correct, we've undergone the curriculum renewal process and purchased high-quality curriculum materials for Tier 1. Is that across all grade levels?
Middle school science was reviewed maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay.
So elementary more recently, and elementary math is brand new.
Yep.
And middle school math is undergoing now. But we have really solid science programs in place, K-12 at this point. We've replaced a lot of old text. We've hired some new teachers, so.
Do you feel like we should engage in a curriculum renewal process for ELA?
Yes, I do, actually. So we've actually started to talk about the process for this year. We had a meeting last week, and we have a meeting, what is today, Wednesday?
Yeah.
No, today's only Tuesday. We have a meeting Thursday morning to talk more.
Almost Wednesday.
Yeah, well, actually, we gathered a bunch of data last week. We met with our elementary coaches and talked about next steps towards a curriculum review. So we're just trying to balance everything with our educators, too. That's another thing, another committee, when we're engaged in all of this, and so just trying to be, looking at the balance and what fits in, but the answer is yes, for me.
I have two other things. but I
No,
can-
go ahead. If it's about English.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are they about English?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to add on to the English then before we keep going from there. I'm wondering if there are so with the drop that we saw for MCAS related to English language arts, I'm wondering if you saw similar drops across other data measurement and assessments that you perform throughout the course of the year. I'm just thinking about timing. I know that this year's ELA MCAS came right on the heels of Omicron, and it felt like everybody was missing
Oh, yeah, Omicron.
school and time, right? I know that feels very long
We
ago,
have
but it
COVID
really
data,
wasn't.
too, we could add to this, right?
I'm just curious, based on that kind of timing, if that could potentially be a factor, and wondering if you saw similar concerns as far as dips in ELA across other assessment measurements.
So the iReady assessment is relatively new.
Yeah.
And so we don't have a lot of years of data for that. And digging into the iReady data, I think we would like to have seen our scores a little higher. But some kids took it the year of COVID, and they took it at home, so we really couldn't count those. And then, so last year was really the first year of full intimate, so
Okay.
we're keeping an eye.
So not many other spots
Not
at
many
this
other,
point.
yeah, it's an
Okay.
interesting time for data. I apologize for
No,
breaks
it's
and,
fair enough.
changing
Yeah.
assessment tools and
At
not
the same
assessing
time,
the
it's
same
okay.
grades and, yes, in the same way.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head. The reality is, students obviously lost a lot of time in the 1920 school year, but even 2021 and 2022, we were challenged, and
In
there were
2021, we had
even
cohorts and-
even last year when we were fully in person, there
We had
was
masks.
the percentage of students that missed extended periods of time because of the COVID event was significant. So lots of disruptions to the school calendar, but individual students' calendars as well.
Exactly. Sorry to interrupt.
No, just quickly, you mentioned the iReady diagnostic.
Mhm.
I didn't realize we also had access to MyPath. Is that for all grade levels, like K through 8, or?
Yeah.
So do kids use that a certain number of minutes a week, or, you know what I mean?
It's not a prescribed number, so
Okay.
it gets assigned by the classroom teacher, and sometimes the reading center will assign it as well. But they don't love MyPath. It's kind of a boring little program. I think that the teachers say, but students seem to chug along, and it's evidence-based. So we used it a lot over the summer. In fact, the summer that COVID hit, we gave students access to MyPath lessons kind of on their own at home. We didn't have our hands on them to kind of guide them through that, and a lot of students used MyPath that first summer. So that was helpful.
I do know about this program. The neat thing about it is it's targeted to where they haven't done well on the diagnostic. So it does seem like kids who use it with consistency, show improvement in those areas on the next diagnostic. And my experience with that is the teachers who are not using MyPath do not see the growth that the teachers who are using it a certain prescribed number of minutes, which is 45. And that's specific to ELA.
Yeah.
45 minutes is a lot of minutes
It
to
is,
find.
and they're, fighting to fit in all of their academics every day and trying not to make homework burdensome for elementary, but but there are students using it and who are chugging along in it, for sure. It hasn't been, it's not a requirement for teachers to use it at this point.
And then just the last thing, if I could, the sleep thing does really stand out. It comes up again and again. And Dagan, I have to say, I honestly think about because you're involved in a lot of things, and I think you must have homework, and these minutes tick away. And I want you play sports, and I'm thinking about what we were just mentioning earlier in the night, how our student athletes are traveling really far, the commutes to some of these games, matches, races, whatever, are not local. And so there is not a lot of consideration for kids who are getting home from their sporting events, and I understand priorities, and we want kids to focus on academics, but I can tell you that what I'm seeing from the high school kid I live with is that if my son needs additional support, he has to go to a morning session because he has sports after school. And so if you just think about his day starting around 7, there's a whole school day, there are sports, there's dinner, shower, which I've gotten to the point where I'm eat while you're working and take the shower the last thing. He's like, I just want to take a shower. I'm like, but by the time you start studying at 9 or 10. So the time management for kids, and if you play an instrument, and if you don't have, what is the period called? An ice block. Even kids who are good at time management and trying to use those minutes in between school and practice, I think if you take a big step back, I go to bed earlier and some days get up later than my high school kid who is using his time efficiently as best as a 15-year-old can do. So
That's one of the things that jumps out too in the Challenge Success Survey that we could share back to parents is that the time distribution, and they have a lot of great research they've done on what, if you add up the expectations that parents have of their children, that teachers have of their children, that they have of themselves, and their coaches have of them, and their tutor has, and it really is more hours.
27-hour day.
And so, I think it's important that we look for these opportunities to share that information back out so that parents and staff have a real true understanding of what is expected of high school and middle school students.
I think that was a discrepant perception between parents and students. So parents were thinking that students or their children were headed to bed at 10 and asleep by 10:15, 10:30, and students are reporting they're asleep by 1, 1:30, 2.
Yeah.
But I think that many kids, if they are trying to get those activities done during the school day, they don't have that time to just regroup. And so it's hard for me to get to sleep if I've worked up till after these meetings. I'm wide awake.
Me too, Mary.
You know what I mean? Because you're engaged and thinking. And so if you think about kids who are doing this every single day, the sleep thing, it really, really stands out to me, and I don't have a solution for that. But if you think about the number of hours that our kids are engaged, it's a lot.
It plays into the sleep thing, plays into the stress thing.
Yes.
It plays into
It's a cycle.
it plays into the competition, because I'll be frank, we're all competing with each other for a slot at Harvard or whatever college you might want to go to or whatever sports team you're on. So like you said, Mary, your son's, I'm the same way. As you said, I'm a heavily involved person. I wake up at 5 a.m., I'm doing work, so I can go to school, so I can go to practice for 2 hours, so I can shower, eat, and then come to the school committee meeting. Just say that's a Tuesday. But there are positives. I think it has personally taught me very good time management, and I think students do recognize the commitments they're making, and they do know how to manage it. Like if you have a game that's going to go till 11 and you get back at 11:30 and you have a paper due at 7 o'clock in the morning, I hate to say it, but that's like kind of the way we just say, oh, that's life. Then there's positives to that, but like you said, there are a lot of drawbacks.
I mean, if I just think about from a health and safety perspective, though, that things like sleep need to be prioritized potentially over a 7 o'clock paper due. Just might not be a popular opinion, but I really think that
Choose sleep.
Yeah.
Needs to be a slogan.
I do think it's important to have these conversations about homework and load that we're putting on our students, especially when we know, I'll speak as a teacher, that we have our students with us for 7 hours in the day already. And how much do we want to add on to that time at home? And how much do we want that time at home to be time with family, time for sports, time for activities, et cetera. Teaching that balance is also part of the social emotional learning that is part of our responsibility and our care, and helping create spaces where that balance can be found as well.
Julie has her hand up too.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Julie, go for it.
Oh, let's,
Hold on one second,
hold
Julie.
on
We
one
wanna
second, Julie. I want to make sure
make it
that
so we can all hear you.
you're heard here. Seems to be only coming through my computer. Try one more time, Julie.
Can you hear me?
there
Much
you go.
better. Thank you.
Perfect.
I feel like all the class is probably not words that I was going to say, because I think once I put my hand up, Nicole kind of said what I wanted to say, which is basically, like, you know, as we're talking, I'm just thinking about what we're teaching students about life skills, and like a more is more is more attitude is not going to prepare them well for what they're going into. And in many ways, like having a sense of self and the fact that, you know, you can be a successful person without having to do all of the things perfectly all the time is just really, really important. And teaching them to say no, you know, so I think we want to consider the life skills aspect of this as well. It doesn't set them up well for what comes next.
Thank you, Julie. There we go. All right, Kevin, and then Gianna.
So just a couple things. One, the close community stuff, we talked about how giving the students an idea of reality is helpful. I know they also do that for parents, and I just want to like shout out to them. Like I found those very helpful when my kids were in high school, when they would say like, you know, this number of kids are not drinking, and you know, this number of parents are not providing alcohol to their kids. Like those sorts of things I think are also powerful, and I hope that we continue to do that. So not just to focus on the kids, but to focus on the parents as well. I want to focus on the MCATs a little bit. So I want to first start with the big picture. Like, can you just remind me about the whole, like, you have to pass MCAS to graduate, right? Because were those numbers in the stuff that you gave us?
What, can you refine your question?
You still have to pass MCAS to graduate
There were some
high school.
accommodations for MCAS during
Right.
COVID for 10th graders who were going to
Right.
be graduating.
So
But yes,
how are our kids doing in terms of passing MCAS to graduate?
99% of our students pass MCAS to graduate.
Okay, so
And there are some workarounds for,
sure.
other things.
So
yeah.
can you, I just want to make sure I understand, because like none of the numbers that I see are anywhere close to 90%. So how did the numbers we're looking at relate to 99% of our kids passing MCAS? Because the highest numbers I see are 70%. Does my question make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the slide deck, what you saw is the percentage that were meeting or exceeding expectations.
Okay.
As
Yeah.
opposed to passing rates.
Oh, okay, all
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Yeah.
So we're not, so if it were passing, meeting, exceeding, it would add up to this 90% number that we're talking about.
We just went by, if we showed you the passing rates for the percentage of students that meet the competency determination in order to graduate from Long Meadow High School, it would be at that
Okay,
90,
all right.
very, very high 90% rate.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
And then I think I am confused, because I've heard numerous times that we're doing better in math than ELA, and when I look at those raw numbers, they look pretty much the same to me, so I don't understand what I'm
The
missing.
trends, I think we're trending better in math and ELA. So I think
But like,
the message is that it appears that we're starting to recover in math, in science. And ELA does not appear to be recovering.
but, I mean, when I look at those numbers, the ELA ones, were 11 points down, and then in math, we're like 8 points down, right? Like, those are,
20, I'll take a shot. You're absolutely right,
Yeah.
what you said.
Yeah.
The recovery that I was describing was from 21 to 22. So in ELA, we saw that from 19 to 21 to 22, that we saw the downward trend. But in math, you'll see that at least from 21 to 22, we're starting to see the bounce back.
okay, so
So
then I find it a little bit odd that the percent increase, decrease on the right is not what you're talking about at the bounce, like that, I think is where the confusion is.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense
Yes,
to me?
Mhm.
completely, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If we gave you another column that showed the change from 21 to 22, it would show that
Okay, so
bounce back, that
that's what we're
recovery.
talking about.
When I say the recovery, I think we're seeing it in math over the last year or so. And in ELA, we just haven't seen, nor has the state seen that turnaround. We're starting to see that turnaround in math.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the right column is not what we're talking about with the recovery.
When I was mentioning the recovery, not what I was talking about. Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Performance over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Is kind of basing recovery on. And again, 2 years is not a trend, right?
No, I understand that, but again, I think we should be very clear what we're talking about, because if somebody's just looking at these numbers, they seem to be different than what we're saying.
Yeah.
If that's the
Gotcha.
point I'm trying to make.
Gotcha.
I'm not saying that I don't think what you're saying is true.
Yes.
The numbers seem different than
Gotcha.
what we're saying.
Yeah.
Totally.
So yeah, the last column was a decrease from 19, increase from 2019, yeah.
Thank you. I'm good.
Okay. Gianna?
Oh, thanks, Nicole. Ironically, I'm going to offer an idea of a homework piece, but superintendent, you remember, again, it was probably like 3 years ago, and I don't know if it was the Challenge Success, but we were sitting in the auditorium, and there was a presentation, and they had the fill in the pie chart.
Yep.
Like, I feel like that'd be such a great
Yep.
little homework piece for the parents. You know, you could do it for all grades, but especially for what we're seeing 7th through 12th. It was like I don't know if you remember, but it was like,
I do.
and you had to fill it in, and like
Yes.
somebody like Dagans is going to be like sleep 3 hours and then be awesome for 21 or whatever.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Yeah, that's a really good time management
that's the
technique,
thing you
or,
want to
you know, for
teach.
people
Yeah.
who are
That's what I
visual
do.
to see where they can fit.
Just as a follow-up to the,
Yeah.
because the data's great, but like, and we can tell people this is the data, but I feel like that activity exercise
Yeah.
was like super
Yes.
helpful. And I wasn't even writing it down. I was just looking at
Yeah.
it on the screen,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah, no, a good memory. Challenge Success speaker who showed that pie chart to staff and parents and
Yeah.
students. We had
Yeah.
the speaker met all three groups, and that was a big, important chunk of their presentation was to
Yeah.
show how that pie chart fills up very, very quickly with activities and school and sleep and, yeah.
There wasn't a lot of people in the audience, so I feel like
Yeah.
a homework assignment, again, ironically, to see how much homework you have is, you know, but like, I think it'd be cool.
I like it.
I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit more on the challenge success data. In particular, I'm looking at the data that talks in both the middle school and the high school about students who feel they have an adult they can go to with personal challenges and those who can identify a trusted peer. So for the middle school, I see 67% have an adult and 83% have a trusted peer. I'm wondering what kind of crossover there might be, and or if that's something that is looked into with the challenge success data. So if we have, for example, 83% who cannot identify who can identify a trusted peer, that leaves 17% who cannot. Are those 17% also part of the students who do not have a trusted adult? Or do those students have a trusted, in other words, does
Yeah.
the data that you get pull it apart so that you can then look at it and say, okay, well, we have 5% of our students left who have neither a trusted adult nor a trusted peer. What are we doing to reach that 5% or whatever it might be?
The challenge success, I don't think we can do that with, but the close community, the youth risk behavior survey, they do a lot of that.
Okay.
You know, to see who's overlapping and things like that. But what we do look at it and say, oh my gosh, there's 17% of students, and that's a lot for me to see. The middle school, for example, is doing interest-based advisories and trying to really get students to be connected to an adult, doing a task during advisory that they're really into. There's photography, and so I think that's going really well. And those relationships are better built up when you're in a place where you like what's being, taught, teachers like it, and so our Connect blocks at the high school are another example of that, like giving kids an opportunity to connect with adults and peers at the high school in a way that's meaningful, so that can be built up. But that is, I think, a really good protective factor. And across the board in all of our surveys, we score pretty high in that in Long Meadow relative to other districts. So it's not 100%, unfortunately. We wish it were, but we do score well in that relative to other school communities. So kudos to us for that. But we work hard at it and need to work harder.
So challenge success does not have a way to do that, but the youth risk behavior survey is targeting where that overlap might happen. Is it?
They can. I don't know that they've done that work, but I think they have a way to do it. Everybody gets like a secret number assigned to them when they take it.
Okay.
At least they have in the past. So.
And that was my question. Is it then available that counselors and others can pull out, like, okay, I'm noticing that these 5 students in the 9th grade might need some check-ins and some extra supports?
Marty, I don't think...
Can I get a clarifying question? Are you wondering if we're able to identify specific students? Or... So
that too, but also the question of, are we finding that the same students
right, so
are saying no to both of them?
The surveys are anonymous in both cases, but we could filter the results to see where that overlap exists.
Okay.
The challenge success dashboard is very robust and easily filtered. The other thing, if there's, we gave you a sampling of some of the data that we look at. If there's any of this that you'd like us to take a deeper dive on, whether it's challenge success or the vocal data or the MCAS data, we'd be happy to come back with that. I know that Paul McNeil has talked to us about his interest in bringing the youth risk behavior survey data to the school committee at some point. So for sure that's something we'd like to bring forward.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. That'd be excellent.
Yeah.
And he's happy to sit with anyone personally also and go through.
Perfect.
Data.
All right. Further questions, thoughts, or comments on student achievement and growth reports? I can't see Julie right now. Hold on.
It's reconnecting.
Maybe disconnected. Hold on, Julie. Oh, there you are.
There we go.
Julie, any final thoughts, questions on student achievement and growth?
I think we're good.
We're good now? Okay.
There you go.
Julie, just checking in to see if you had any final thoughts or questions on the student achievement and growth report. We lost you for a minute there. Or Zach, I see you now there as well. If you do, throw a hand up.
Can they hear us?
I'm hoping they can hear us.
Are you asking me?
Yep, just checking in to see if you had any last thoughts, questions on this data, or
Oh,
Zach.
sorry. I had to dial back in when the audio stopped working, but I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Zach, you can hear us from home as well, right?
I can. Thank you for checking in, but similar to Julie, I had a second where I lost connectivity, so
Yes.
there might have been a glitch there, but I'm back now.
Perfect. No, we lost connectivity here as well. All right, great. Then we are moving on to Pupil Services. Dr. O'Shea?
All right. So, as I anticipated, we, just prior to your meeting this evening, received notice from the Director of Pupil Services, Jean Fontaine, that she has accepted a position in Ludlow Public Schools. So it's a significant loss for us. Jean's been a valued member of Long Meadow Public Schools for over a couple of decades now, and I know we've all enjoyed our partnership with her, and she's accomplished some great things over the last couple of decades, but completely understand and support her interest in the position in Ludlow. It, by all accounts, is a better, good fit for her personally and professionally at this point in her career. So we're grateful for Jean. My understanding is that her start date will be January 3rd, but that still needs to be pinned down. So the reason that it's important to talk to the committee about this is that under Mass General laws, as you know, but more for our audience at home, the state statute requires that special education directors contract directly with school committees, as you know. And so I felt like it was important to notify you of that and to let you know that it would be my intention to bring forward a recommended replacement successor to Jean at an upcoming meeting that might come as a result of a search, or we might have some internal capacity here in Long Meadow Public Schools, and we would have an opportunity to appoint someone internally on a regular basis or an interim basis. So we're working through that, and we'll be in consultation with Jean and the rest of the administrative team on next steps with that. So, it's at these points, I think, that it's always a good opportunity to sort of assess the leadership structure and think about how the leadership structure aligns with our strategic priorities. And I'm thinking about just our meeting tonight and how much attention was given to student well-being, to school climate, to student safety, to student sense of belonging, and that's obviously a reflection of how important that is in schools nowadays. When I first started as an administrator, these data presentations, these achievement presentations were almost exclusively focused on MCAS, and you can see that we necessarily, understandably, look at it through a much wider lens nowadays, and that we are looking at the factors that influence that student's sense of belonging, their sense of connectedness to school, school climate, their sense of safety, their sense of overall well-being. And so it's sort of maybe helpful to have this conversation in light of our conversations earlier. What I would propose to the committee tonight is that we would be interested in making some critical investments in leadership in the areas that we've been talking about tonight, in the areas of safety, wellness, well-being, and school climate. And when I think back over the last several years, over the investments that this committee has made and supported, many of those really relate to student well-being, student wellness, to school climate. And I think about the investments that we've made in counseling services, student support specialist positions, RBTs, the registered behavior technicians, the additional nursing position, the focus that we've had on prevention and intervention work. We've made critical investments at the school level, at the classroom level, and we've increased the amount of direct supports that we provide students in all of these areas. Their overall health, their overall well-being, their overall sense of belonging. Again, so much of it was talked about tonight. Where I think we have an opportunity with Jean's impending departure is to make some investments in leadership that would support student safety, student well-being, and school climate, and their overall sense of belonging. So if this is something that makes sense to the committee, I don't think any vote is needed tonight, but if it's something that makes sense, what I'd like to do is sort of refine this idea and come back to you at a future meeting with a job description and a set of responsibilities for this district-level leadership position that I think we ought to strongly consider. And when I think about this role, I think frankly about some of the things that are presently under the umbrella of our Director of Pupil Services. But additionally, there are many other things that I think need our focused attention, and I think we have an opportunity to provide additional supports to students and families and staff in these areas. So when I think about ensuring that we have a really coordinated and aligned system of positive behavioral supports, that we have a coordinated social emotional learning program, that we are really able to make investments in that sense of belonging that we want for all members of this community, and that relates to it really relates to a lot of the DEI work that we've been involved in. I think there's the coordination of counseling supports, there's the coordination of health services that could be involved with this. And then some of the other more nuts and bolts aspects of pupil services, and that is the work that we need to do to ensure that we're providing appropriate supports for homeless students, to ensure that we're providing appropriate access and supports for English language learners, to ensure that we are creating school climates that are in compliance with Title IX regulations. There's really a whole host of activities that I really think this community would benefit from some district level leadership with. And so Jean's letter to us indicating that she had taken the position in Ludlow just came to us tonight. We knew that this was a possibility, and we supported Jean in this idea. But I think with her impending departure, we've got an opportunity to make sure that our leadership structure is really in line with our strategic goals, and more importantly, really in line with what I think students in this community need at this point, and what families hope for them and expect of us. So again, I'm not sure a vote is necessarily needed, but if this is something that makes sense to the committee, we'd like to come back to you with kind of a refined idea of what this could look like, a job description, and potential next steps. So, but to go back to where I started, it's certainly my intention to bring to the committee a recommendation for to ensure that we have special education services are being properly managed and coordinated. So that would be part of our conversation with the committee at your next meeting as well. So I'm hoping all that makes sense, and happy to clarify if not.
All right, open the floor to discussion, thoughts, comments, either from folks at home or here. Jenna?
Thank you, Nicole. Superintendent, thank you for all that. I mean, you said everything, perfectly. I can't really add to that, but I did just want to say thank you I know this was an idea you had all along, but I just want to say thank you for not just considering it, but actually, y'all are going to do some work to get this done. And I as an elementary school adjustment counselor, I see all these sides and all these aspects and everything that you listed, and I think it will be, Jean is amazing, and what Long Meadow Public Schools does right now is fantastic, but with the increase in all the needs, and again, you mentioned the superintendent, I just think the ability for one person to super focus on all those increased needs and all those program services, and then somebody else like you described, so I just want to say thank you.
All right, seeing no other thoughts, I just wanted to take a moment to, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think this makes really good sense, so thank you for putting it together, Brian.
Yes, thank you for putting this together, and also thank you to Jean for her years of service. We wish you all good things moving forward, and appreciate all the work you've done for the school district over the years.
And Zach had his hand up as well.
And Zach, go for it.
Thank you. I echo everybody's commendations for Jean. She's absolutely lovely, and we think the world of her here in our house. I would just additionally offer that the district has a reputation locally for being incredibly supportive and incredibly responsive to families with different needs. And I love that we are continuing to think creatively about how to uphold that reputation and continue to move it forward.
Thank you. All right. Not seeing any additional hands. We have a final motion for the evening related to an executive session.
All right. I move that the school committee meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation with collective bargaining with Units A, F, H, and Purpose 7, consideration of release of executive session minutes of previous meetings, not to reconvene into open session.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a roll call vote. Gianna?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Thank you, and yes for me as well.
Did I mention, just
yes.
before, I'm sorry to interrupt, for Zach and Julie, there is a separate link for the executive session that you'll need to access, so I just wanted to make sure that we'll close down this link and then we'll open up the executive session link.
Perfect. Good plan.
Okay.
All right, thank you. We will adjourn to executive session, not to reconvene into open session. Thank you very much for everyone for joining us tonight, and we'll see you again soon.